The blood had dried on the wooden floorboards 3 days before Emma Grace Vaughn arrived in Opal, Wyoming, carrying nothing but a carpet bag and bruises hidden beneath her long sleeves. She stepped off the stagecoach into the August heat of 1876, her ribs aching with every breath, and heard the whispers start immediately among the gathered townsfolk who had come to collect mail in parcels. "That is her," an older woman with gray hair tucked under a bonnet said to her companion, not bothering to lower her voice. Her ex-husband beat her until she lost her babe. Poor thing came all this way to escape him. Emma's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes forward, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. The pain medication the doctor in Cheyenne had given her was wearing off, and the bruises on her abdomen throbbed with each step. She had lost everything in Denver, her marriage, her child who would never draw breath, and nearly her life. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago, but Thomas Vaughn's fury had not ended with the signed papers. He had come to her small rented room in a rage, drunk and violent, and she had barely escaped with her life after he discovered she was carrying what would have been his child. The town of Opal was small, perhaps 200 souls, nestled in a valley with mountains rising on all sides. Main Street consisted of a general store, a saloon, a church, a boarding house, and a handful of other establishments. Emma had written ahead to secure a room at the boarding house, using the last of the money her sister had sent her. She needed time to heal, time to think, time to figure out how a 22-year-old woman with no family nearby and no husband could make a life in this harsh territory. "Miss Vaughn," a woman in her 50s approached, her expression kind despite the curiosity in her eyes. "I am Mrs. Patterson. I run the boarding house. Your room is ready." "Thank you," Emma managed, her voice hoarse from days of crying and the bruises on her throat where Thomas had squeezed. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened when she saw the marks, and her expression shifted from curiosity to protective concern. "Come along, dear. Let us get you settled and comfortable." The boarding house was clean and simple, with whitewashed walls and plain furnishings. Mrs. Patterson led Emma up narrow stairs to a small room on the second floor that overlooked the mountains. The bed was covered with a cheerful quilt, and there was a washstand with a pitcher and basin. "I will bring you some hot water and something to eat," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "You rest now." Emma sank onto the bed as soon as the woman left, tears streaming down her face. She had loved Thomas once, or thought she had. He had been charming during their courtship, attentive and kind, but the mask had slipped soon after their wedding, and the man beneath had been cruel and violent. For 2 years she had endured it, making excuses, believing his promises that he would change. When she finally found the courage to leave him and seek a divorce, he had been incensed. The beating that cost her the baby had happened the night after the divorce was finalized, as if he wanted to punish her one final time for daring to leave him. She must have dozed off because she woke to a knock on the door. Mrs. Patterson entered with a tray of food and a worried expression. "There is talk in town," the older woman said carefully as she set down the tray. "Some men were asking about you at the saloon. They said they were looking for a woman matching your description." Emma's blood ran cold. "What did they look like?" "One was tall and thin, dark hair. The other was shorter, stocky. They claimed to be lawmen, but they wore no badges." Those were Thomas's friends, the men he drank with and who shared his views about women needing to be kept in line. Emma's hands trembled as she gripped the quilt. What did people tell them? "Most folks here do not care for strangers asking questions. They said they had seen no such woman." Mrs. Patterson's expression was firm. "But you need protection, dear. Have you considered going to the sheriff?" "The law will not help me," Emma said bitterly. "I was his wife. Many men believe a husband has the right to discipline his wife as he sees fit." Mrs. Patterson sighed, knowing the truth of those words. "There is a man who lives up in the mountains, about an hour's ride from town. His name is Isaac Morrison. He's what folks call a mountain man, been living up there for near about 5 years. He comes to town for supplies once a month or so. He's a hard man, rough around the edges, but he has a good heart. When bandits attacked the Johnsons' homestead last year, Isaac tracked them down and brought back the stolen cattle. He does not tolerate men who hurt the innocent." "Why would he help me?" Emma asked quietly. "Because that is the kind of man he is," Mrs. Patterson said simply. "He lost his own family back east, some sort of tragedy he does not speak of. Been alone ever since. But he has helped folks in this town more than once when danger came calling. If those men come back looking for you, Isaac Morrison is the one person who might be able to stand against them." Emma ate the soup and bread Mrs. Patterson had brought, her mind churning. She did not want to bring her troubles to a stranger, but she also knew that Thomas would not stop looking for her. He had told her during that terrible beating that she belonged to him, that divorce papers meant nothing, that he would find her wherever she ran. He wanted to punish her for leaving, for embarrassing him, for daring to seek freedom. 3 days passed quietly. Emma rested and her bruises began to fade from purple to yellow-green. She ventured out only once, to the general store for a few necessities, and felt eyes on her the entire time. The townsfolk were sympathetic, but wary, unsure what trouble she might bring to their peaceful community. On the 4th day, the men came back. Emma was sitting by her window, mending a tear in her dress when she saw them ride down Main Street. Her heart nearly stopped. There were 3 of them now, and Thomas was with them. Even from a distance, she recognized his posture, the way he sat his horse with arrogant confidence. She dropped her sewing and backed away from the window, her breath coming in panicked gasps. They went to the saloon first, then the general store. Emma watched from the shadows of her room as they questioned people. Most shook their heads and moved on quickly, but she knew it was only a matter of time before someone pointed them toward the boarding house. There were only so many places in a small town to hide. Mrs. Patterson burst into her room without knocking. "They are asking about you directly now, using your name. You need to go right now. Take the back stairs." "Where can I go?" Emma's voice shook. "The livery stable. Tell old Sam that I sent you and you need a horse. Head north out of town toward the mountains. There's only one trail, and it will take you to Isaac Morrison's cabin. Go now, before they come here." Emma grabbed her carpetbag and followed Mrs. Patterson down the narrow back stairs that led to the kitchen. Her ribs screamed in protest at the quick movement, but fear drove her forward. She slipped out the back door and hurried through the alley to the livery stable, keeping to the shadows. Old Sam was a weathered man with kind eyes, who asked no questions when she stammered out Mrs. Patterson's message. He saddled a gentle mare and helped Emma mount, then pointed her toward the trail north. "Follow the creek," he said quietly. "The path is clear enough. Morrison's cabin is about 2 hours up, maybe less if you hurry. Tell him Sam sent you and that you need help. He will understand." Emma nodded her thanks and urged the horse forward. She had learned to ride as a girl, though it had been years since she had been on a horse. Her body protested every jolt and bounce as the mare trotted through town, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. She heard shouts behind her as she reached the edge of Opal and knew she had been spotted. The trail followed a clear creek that tumbled down from the mountains, lined with pine trees and aspens. The August sun was hot, but the shade of the trees provided relief. Emma pushed the mare as fast as she dared, glancing back frequently to see if she was being followed. After about 20 minutes, she heard the thunder of hoofbeats behind her and knew Thomas and his men had given chase. Terror gave her strength she did not know she possessed. She leaned forward over the mare's neck and urged her faster, the carpetbag bouncing against the saddle. The trail grew steeper and rockier as it climbed into the mountains. Her lungs burned, and her ribs felt like they might crack, but she did not slow down. The men behind her were gaining. She could hear Thomas shouting her name, his voice echoing through the trees. "Emma, you cannot run from me. You are mine." The trail curved sharply and suddenly opened into a clearing. Emma saw a sturdy log cabin nestled against the mountainside, with a corral holding several horses and a small garden plot. Smoke rose from the stone chimney. She nearly sobbed with relief as she pulled the mare to a stop in front of the cabin. "Help!" she called out, her voice cracking. "Please, someone help me!" The cabin door opened and a man stepped out. Emma's breath caught. He was enormous, easily over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they nearly filled the doorway. His arms were thick with muscle, visible beneath the rolled-up sleeves of his flannel shirt. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, tied back with a leather cord, and his face was bearded and weathered by sun and wind. His eyes were a startling gray, sharp and assessing as they took in her panicked state and the approaching riders. "Get inside," he said, his voice deep and calm. He moved with surprising speed for such a large man, reaching up to help her down from the horse. His hands were gentle despite their size, and he steadied her when her knees nearly buckled. "They are coming," Emma gasped. My ex-husband and his friends, they want to hurt me. Please, I know I have no right to ask, but please help me." Isaac Morrison looked down at her, taking in the fading bruises on her throat, the way she held her ribs, the terror in her green eyes. Something shifted in his expression, a hardening of his jaw, and a cold fury that entered his eyes. "Get inside," he repeated. "Stay away from the windows." Emma stumbled into the cabin just as Thomas and his men burst into the clearing. Isaac stood in front of his cabin, arms crossed over his massive chest, looking utterly unmoved by the three armed men on horseback. "That is my wife," Thomas shouted, dismounting with his two companions. All three had guns on their hips. "She ran away and I have come to bring her home." "Ex-wife," Isaac corrected, his voice carrying clearly. "And she is under my protection now. You need to leave." Thomas laughed, a cruel sound. "Who the hell are you? Some mountain hermit? She belongs to me. The law says a man has rights over his wife." "The law says she is divorced from you," Isaac replied evenly, "and a man who beats a woman until she loses a child has no rights at all, far as I am concerned." From inside the cabin, Emma pressed her hand to her mouth. How did he know? Had the whole town been talking about her shame? Thomas's face darkened with rage. "She told you that? The lying whore probably fell downstairs and blamed me. She was always clumsy, always causing trouble." Isaac took a step forward, and even from horseback, Thomas's companions shifted nervously. There was something in the mountain man's bearing, a coiled strength and absolute confidence that made him seem even larger than his considerable size. "I will say this once more," Isaac said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "Leave. The woman stays here. If you come back, you will not leave these mountains alive." Thomas's hand moved toward his gun. "You are threatening me. I will see you hang for this." Isaac moved so fast that Emma barely saw it. He crossed the distance between himself and Thomas in 3 long strides, grabbed the smaller man by the throat with one massive hand, and lifted him clear off the ground. Thomas's companions went for their guns, but Isaac's other hand was already holding a large knife that had appeared from somewhere in his belt. "Shoot and he dies first," Isaac said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. Thomas made choking sounds, his feet kicking uselessly in the air. "Then I will kill both of you, or you can ride away right now and live. Your choice." The two men looked at each other, then at their friend turning purple in Isaac's grip, then back at the mountain man who held him like he weighed nothing. Slowly, they raised their hands away from their weapons. "We are going," one of them said quickly. "Just let him go." Isaac held Thomas for another long moment, then dropped him. Thomas landed hard on the ground, gasping and coughing. Isaac stood over him, utterly still. "You tell the sheriff in Cheyenne, you tell any lawman you want, that Emma Vaughn is under my protection. Tell them what you did to her. Tell them I said if you or anyone else comes looking for her, I will make sure you lose everything. Your friends, your reputation, your life, all of it. That is my promise to you." Thomas scrambled backward, his face twisted with rage and humiliation, but he did not reach for his gun again. He climbed onto his horse with his companion's help, and the three of them rode back down the mountain trail at a gallop. Isaac watched until they disappeared from sight, then turned and walked back to the cabin. Emma stood just inside the doorway, trembling. When he entered, she realized just how small the cabin felt with him in it. He had to duck slightly to come through the door, and his presence filled the space. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm so sorry to bring this trouble to your door. I did not know where else to go." Isaac studied her for a moment, his gray eyes softening slightly. "You are safe here. That is all that matters right now. Sit down before you fall down." Emma sank into the chair he indicated, suddenly aware of how much pain she was in. The frantic ride had reopened some of her injuries, and she could feel wetness seeping through her dress. Isaac saw her wince and knelt beside her, his huge frame somehow less intimidating when he lowered himself to her level. "Where are you hurt?" he asked quietly. "My ribs," she admitted. "He kicked me. The doctor in Cheyenne wrapped them, but I think I may have damaged them again." "May I?" Isaac gestured to her side, and when she nodded, he very carefully helped her out of her jacket and examined the bandages beneath her dress. His hands were surprisingly gentle, and his expression grew darker as he saw the extent of the bruising. "These need to be rewrapped," he said. "I have medical supplies. I will step outside while you remove your dress enough for me to access the injury, then you can call me back in. There's a blanket on the bed you can use to cover yourself." Emma did as he instructed, moved by his consideration for her modesty. When she called him back, she was sitting in the chair with the blanket draped over her shoulders and front, the damaged bandages exposed at her side. Isaac worked with practiced efficiency, cleaning the area where the bandages had rubbed her skin raw and rewrapping her ribs with clean cloth. His touch was careful, never more than was necessary. "You have done this before," Emma observed. "I was a field surgeon during the war," Isaac said quietly. "Saw too much pain and death. Came out here to get away from it all, but seems like suffering follows a man whether he wants it to or not." "I did not mean to bring mine to you," Emma said softly. Isaac looked up at her, his gray eyes meeting her green ones. "I meant what I said to that man. You are under my protection now. He will not touch you again." Something in his voice, in his steady gaze, made Emma believe him. She had not felt safe in so long, but here in this rough cabin with this dangerous, gentle man, she finally felt like she could breathe. Over the following days, a routine developed. Isaac gave Emma his bed and made himself a pallet on the floor, refusing her protests that she could not take his bed. He rose early each morning to tend his horses and check his trap lines. He hunted and fished and kept the cabin stocked with meat and provisions. Emma, as she grew stronger, began helping with cooking and mending. They spoke little at first, both comfortable with silence, but gradually they began to share pieces of their stories. Isaac had been married before the war, he told her one evening as they ate dinner. His wife, Sarah, and their young daughter had died of fever while he was away fighting. He had come home to an empty house and graves in the churchyard. The grief had nearly destroyed him, and he had fled west, seeking solitude and peace in the wilderness. Emma told him about her marriage to Thomas, about the slow realization that she had married a monster, about the years of abuse and her desperate escape. She told him about the baby she had lost, and for the first time since it happened, she let herself cry. Isaac sat beside her and let her weep, not trying to fix it or tell her it would be all right, just present and solid and steady. "He said he would make me lose everything," Emma said through her tears. "And he did. My child, my home, my name, everything." "He did not take everything," Isaac said quietly. "He did not take your courage. He did not take your strength. You survived him, Emma. You got out. That takes more bravery than most men I knew in the war ever showed." Emma looked up at him, this mountain of a man with his weathered face and sad eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. It was not love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. A recognition, perhaps, of a kindred spirit, someone else who had been broken by life and was trying to piece themselves back together. As August turned to September, the aspens began to turn gold on the mountainsides. Emma's ribs healed, and the bruises faded to nothing. She grew stronger, helping Isaac with more tasks around the cabin and homestead. He taught her to fish in the creek and to identify which plants in the forest were edible. She taught him to make bread from scratch and mended all his worn clothing. They fell into an easy companionship that felt natural and right. Isaac made her laugh with dry observations about the wildlife that visited their clearing. Emma brought warmth and life back to the cabin that had been just a shelter for so long. Neither spoke of what was growing between them, but it was there, in every shared glance, every accidental touch, every comfortable silence. One afternoon in late September, Emma was hanging laundry when she heard horses approaching. Her heart seized with fear, but Isaac appeared immediately at her side, rifle in hand. They both relaxed when they saw it was old Sam from the livery and Mrs. Patterson. "Thought you should know," Sam said after dismounting. "Those men came back to town a couple weeks ago, asking more questions. Sheriff finally got involved and looked into their story. Turns out Thomas Vaughn is wanted in Colorado for fraud and assault. Beat another man near to death over a card game before he came looking for Emma. Sheriff sent word to the Marshal Service. They are looking for him now." Ms. Patterson smiled at Emma. "You are safe, dear. Even if he wanted to come back, he's too busy running from the law now. His friends turned on him too, testified about what he did to you to try to save themselves from charges of aiding a fugitive." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes, but these were tears of relief. "It is really over?" "Far as anyone can tell," Sam said, "that ex-husband of yours is going to lose everything, just like Isaac said. His freedom, his reputation, maybe his life if they catch him in the wrong territory. Justice is slow, but it catches up eventually. After their visitors left, Emma turned to Isaac. I can go back to town now. I can start over, find work, make a life. Isaac was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally he said, Is that what you want? To go back to town? Emma realized she had been hoping he would ask her to stay, hoping he felt what she felt. But she also knew Isaac was a man of few words, and she would have to be brave enough to speak first. No, she said softly. What I want is to stay here. With you. If you want me to stay. Isaac turned to face her fully, and the expression in his gray eyes made her breath catch. I have been alone for a long time, he said quietly. Told myself I was better off that way, that I could not bear to care for someone again and risk losing them. But these past weeks with you, Emma, you have brought light back into my life. I wake up and look forward to the day because you are in it. I go to sleep grateful that you are safe under my roof. I think about you constantly. If you stay, it will not be as my guest or my ward. It will be as my wife, if you will have me. Emma's heart felt like it might burst. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will have you. Isaac closed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. He was so large that she felt completely enveloped by him, safe and warm and protected. He tilted her chin up and kissed her with a tenderness that belied his strength. Emma kissed him back, pouring all her gratitude and hope and growing love into that kiss. They were married in the small church in Opal 2 weeks later, with Mrs. Patterson and old Sam as witnesses. Emma wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her make, and Isaac wore his cleanest clothes and had trimmed his beard. The whole town turned out for the wedding, happy to celebrate something joyful after all the drama of the summer. That winter was the happiest of Emma's life. The cabin that had seemed so small at first became a cozy haven as the snow piled high outside. Isaac kept them well supplied with firewood and meat, and Emma filled their home with cooking smells and laughter. They talked for hours by the fire, sharing their pasts and their dreams for the future. Isaac told her about the farm he hoped to build, expanding beyond trapping and hunting to raising cattle and horses. Emma told him about her dream of having a family again, of children who would know only love and safety. I want that too, Isaac said one night as they lay together in bed, Emma curled against his massive chest. But only if it is what you truly want after everything you lost. I want it, Emma said firmly. I want a life with you, Isaac. I want children we raise together with love. I want to grow old on this mountain with you. Isaac held her closer and kissed the top of her head. Then that is what we will have. I promise you, Emma, I will spend every day of my life making you happy and keeping you safe. And he kept that promise. When spring came and Emma discovered she was pregnant, Isaac was both terrified and overjoyed. He hovered over her constantly, insisting she rest and not overwork herself. Emma tolerated his protective nature with amused patience, recognizing it for what it was, love expressed through action. In the fall of 1877, Emma gave birth to a healthy baby boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination. They named him Samuel Isaac Morrison, after old Sam, who had helped Emma escape to safety. Isaac held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his weathered face. I never thought I would have this again, he said in a choked voice. A family, a future. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Emma whispered back, watching her husband cradle their child. You saved my life in every way that matters. 2 years later, they had a daughter, red-haired and spirited, whom they named Grace after Emma's middle name. By then, Isaac had expanded the homestead considerably. He had built a larger cabin, a proper barn, and corrals for the growing herd of horses he was breeding. Emma had a garden that was the envy of every woman in Opal, and she had become known throughout the territory for her healing skills, having learned much from Isaac's medical knowledge. Word came in 1879 that Thomas Vaughn had been caught in Colorado and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor for his crimes. Emma felt nothing but relief when she heard the news. That part of her life was truly over, buried in the past where it belonged. On a crisp autumn morning in 1880, Emma stood on the porch of their cabin, watching Isaac teach 4-year-old Samuel how to brush down one of the horses. Baby Grace was napping inside, and Emma's hand rested on her stomach where a third child grew. The mountains rose magnificent around them, painted in gold and red and orange by the changing season. Mrs. Patterson, who had become a regular visitor and dear friend, came up beside her. "You look content," the older woman observed. "I am," Emma said simply. "I never thought I could be this happy. Never thought I deserved it." "You always deserved it, dear," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "You just needed to find the right man, one who would cherish you the way you deserved." Emma watched Isaac laugh at something Samuel said, the sound carrying clearly across the clearing. Her husband looked up and caught her eye, and the love in his expression made her heart skip even after 4 years of marriage. "He is everything I never knew I needed," Emma said softly. "Strong enough to protect me, gentle enough to heal me, patient enough to let me find myself again." That evening, after the children were asleep, Emma and Isaac sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Isaac's arm was around her shoulders, and Emma leaned into his solid warmth. "Do you ever regret it?" Isaac asked quietly. "Taking a chance on a rough mountain man? You could have gone back to civilization, found an easier life." Emma turned to look at him, reaching up to touch his bearded face. "Never," she said firmly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Isaac Morrison. You and our children and this life we are building together. When I rode up that mountain running from my past, I found my future. I found home." Isaac kissed her, deep and thorough, then rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Emma, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You brought me back to life when I was just existing. You gave me purpose again, hope again." "I love you too," Emma whispered. "Thank you for being the man who said he would make Thomas lose everything, and then proved that protecting someone you love is the greatest power of all." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the mountains. Samuel cried out in his sleep, and Isaac went to check on him, then came back and reported both children were sleeping peacefully. Emma smiled, thinking about the life growing inside her, about the farm they would continue to build, about the years stretching ahead of them. She had lost so much, her first baby, her innocence about the goodness of people, years of her life to fear and pain. But she had gained so much more. A husband who cherished her, children who would grow up knowing only love, a home where she felt safe and valued. She had found strength she never knew she possessed and learned that she was worthy of happiness. The Wild West was an unforgiving place, harsh and dangerous and full of hardship. But it was also a place where people could reinvent themselves, where the past did not have to define the future, where two broken souls could find each other and heal together. As autumn deepened and the first snows began to dust the highest peaks, the Morrison homestead thrived. Isaac's horse breeding business was becoming known throughout Wyoming and beyond. Men came from as far as Montana to buy his strong, well-trained animals. Emma's reputation as a healer brought people up the mountain seeking her help, and she never turned anyone away. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning to track and hunt and care for the animals. Grace proved to be fearless and adventurous, climbing trees and splashing in the creek with wild abandon. In the spring of 1881, Emma gave birth to another son, whom they named Daniel. He was a quiet baby with his mother's green eyes and a calm temperament that made him easy to care for. Life was not without its challenges. The winters were harsh, and there were times when they were snowed in for weeks at a time. Mountain lions and bears were constant threats to the livestock. Illness and injury were always a concern so far from town. But Isaac and Emma faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each challenge overcome. One summer day, in 1882, a stranger rode up to the homestead. Emma tensed automatically at the sight of an unknown man, old fears rising, but Isaac's calm demeanor reassured her. The man was a marshal, and he had come with news. "Thomas Vaughn died in prison last month," the marshal said. "Knife fight with another inmate. I thought you would want to know, Mrs. Morrison." Emma felt Isaac's hand find hers and squeeze gently. She took a deep breath and realized she felt nothing but relief. No sorrow, no anger, just a sense of finality. That chapter of her life was completely closed now. "Thank you for telling us," she said steadily. "I hope he found peace in the end, though I doubt he did." After the marshal left, Isaac pulled Emma into his arms. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "Free," Emma said honestly. "Completely, finally free. He cannot hurt me, cannot threaten us, cannot cast any shadow over our lives. It is truly over." Isaac held her close. "It was over the day you rode up this mountain and gave me your trust. Everything since then has been us building our future. His death changes nothing about who we are." Emma nodded against his chest. He was right, of course. Thomas had stopped mattering to her long ago. What mattered was the life she had built with Isaac, the family they had created, the love they shared. That evening, as they gathered for dinner with their 3 children, Emma looked around the table and felt overwhelming gratitude. Samuel was telling some elaborate story about a rabbit he had seen that day. Grace was trying to steal food from Daniel's plate when she thought no one was looking. Isaac caught Emma's eye and smiled, that private smile he reserved just for her. This was everything she had dreamed of during those dark years with Thomas, though she had not dared to hope it could be real. A home filled with laughter and love, children who were cherished and safe, a husband who treated her as an equal partner, who valued her thoughts and opinions, who would move mountains to protect his family. As the years passed, the Morrison family became an integral part of the Opal community. Isaac served on the town council and helped settle disputes. Emma started a small school for children whose families lived too far from town to attend the regular schoolhouse. Their homestead grew into a prosperous ranch, with cattle joining the horses and expanded buildings dotting their land. Samuel grew into a strong, capable young man who loved the mountains as much as his father did. He learned everything Isaac could teach him about surviving and thriving in the wilderness. Grace surprised everyone by becoming fascinated with medicine and healing, following her mother around and asking endless questions about herbs and treatments. Daniel, quiet and thoughtful, showed an aptitude for working with horses that surpassed even his father's skill. In 1885, Emma gave birth to twin girls, Eleanor and Rose, who arrived early and tiny but fought their way to health with fierce determination. Isaac, watching his wife nurse the twins, told her she was the strongest person he had ever known. "You survived things that would have broken most people," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You built a life from ashes. You gave me back my heart. You are raising our children to be good, kind people. You are everything, Emma." Emma smiled up at him, her eyes bright with happy tears. "We did this together," she corrected gently. "I could not have survived without you. You caught me when I was falling and gave me a safe place to land. You showed me what love is supposed to be." As the twins grew, the cabin that Isaac had expanded twice already became too small once more. In the summer of 1886, with the help of men from town and neighbors from surrounding homesteads, Isaac built a proper ranch house. It was 2 stories, with enough bedrooms for their growing family and a large kitchen where Emma could cook and teach her children. There was a parlor with a fireplace and windows that looked out at the mountains. It was more house than Emma had ever imagined having, and she loved every inch of it. On the day they moved into the new house, Isaac carried Emma over the threshold despite her laughing protests that she was too heavy after 5 pregnancies. Their children followed, chattering excitedly about their rooms. That night, after the children were finally settled in their new beds, Isaac and Emma stood on the porch of their new home, arms around each other. "Do you remember the day we met?" Isaac asked quietly. "You rode up here terrified, hurt, running for your life. I remember thinking you were the biggest, most intimidating man I had ever seen," Emma said with a smile. "Then you spoke to me with such gentleness, and I knew I would be safe." "I knew the moment I saw you that you were special," Isaac admitted. "Something in your eyes, the way you did not give up even though you were clearly in pain. I wanted to protect you. Then I wanted to keep you. Then I could not imagine my life without you." "You told Thomas he would lose everything," Emma said, leaning her head on Isaac's broad shoulder. "And he did. But we gained everything. Look at what we have built, Isaac. This beautiful home, our children, our life together. We won." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "We did win. Love won. And I promise you, Emma, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I could never regret it," Emma said softly. "Choosing you was the easiest decision I ever made." The years continued to flow by, each one bringing new joys and challenges. The children grew and thrived. Samuel married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property and built his own homestead nearby. Grace went to nursing school in Cheyenne and came back to practice medicine in Opal, becoming the first female doctor in the territory. Daniel took over the horse breeding business and expanded it beyond anything Isaac had imagined. The twins, inseparable as always, became teachers and opened a proper schoolhouse in Opal. Through it all, Isaac and Emma remained the steady center of their growing family. They celebrated births and mourned losses. They weathered droughts and harsh winters. They faced illness and injury with the same steadfast partnership that had sustained them from the beginning. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1896, their children threw them a celebration. Friends and neighbors came from miles around. There was food and music and dancing. Emma, now 42 and still beautiful, danced with Isaac under the stars just as they had on their wedding night 2 decades before. "Did you ever imagine this?" Emma asked as Isaac swung her around. 20 years, 5 children, countless grandchildren, a legacy we are building together? "No," Isaac admitted. "After I lost Sarah and my daughter, I thought my life was over. I thought I would just exist until I died. Then you came riding up that mountain, and everything changed. You saved me just as much as I saved you, Emma." "We saved each other," Emma corrected, reaching up to touch his face. His hair was silver now, his beard fully gray, but his eyes were still that startling gray, and his arms were still strong around her. "We gave each other a reason to live again, to hope again, to love again." Isaac pulled her close and kissed her, not caring that their children and half the county were watching. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "I love you more now than I did on our wedding day," he said quietly. "Every year, every day with you has been a gift. You are my heart, Emma, my home, my everything." "And you are mine," Emma whispered, "always and forever." As the celebration continued around them, Emma thought about the girl she had been when she arrived in Opal 20 years ago. Broken, bruised, terrified, having lost everything. She thought about how far she had come, how much she had healed, how full her life had become. She thought about the man who had taken her in and protected her, who had been patient while she healed, who had loved her so completely that she had learned to love herself again. Thomas had tried to destroy her. He had beaten her, stolen her child, nearly killed her. He had wanted her to lose everything, but in the end, he was the one who lost. He lost his freedom, his life, his chance for redemption, and Emma had gained more than she ever dreamed possible. She had a husband who cherished her, children who loved her, grandchildren who brightened her days. She had a home that was filled with laughter and warmth. She had friends and community and purpose. She had survived the worst that life could throw at her and built something beautiful from the ruins. As the party wound down and their family began to head home, Emma and Isaac stood on their porch watching the last wagons disappear down the trail. The mountains rose dark against the star-filled sky, the same mountains that had sheltered them for 2 decades. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, and closer by, an owl called. "Ready for bed?" Isaac asked, his arm around her waist. "Ready for the next 20 years, Emma replied with a smile, "and the 20 after that and however many more we are blessed with." They went inside their home, closing the door on the night and the world outside. In the quiet of their bedroom, they held each other close. 2 souls who had found each other in the darkest of times and built a love that would last forever. Emma fell asleep in Isaac's arms, safe and loved and home. She dreamed of the future, of watching their children's children grow, of growing old with the man who had saved her life in every way that mattered. She dreamed of the mountains and the ranch and the life they had built together. She dreamed of love triumphant, of justice served, of hope realized. When she woke in the morning, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Isaac was already up making coffee. She could hear the sounds of the ranch waking up, horses whinnying, cattle lowing, birds singing their morning songs. She stretched and smiled, feeling nothing but contentment. This was her life now. Not running, not hiding, not afraid. Safe and loved and happy. The girl who had ridden up the mountain fleeing her abuser was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and her strength. The mountain man who had been just existing in his grief was gone too, replaced by a husband and father who had found joy again. They had both been broken when they met, but together they had healed. Together they had built something extraordinary. Together they had won. Emma went downstairs to join her husband, ready to face whatever the day would bring, knowing that as long as they faced it together, they could handle anything. The Wild West had tested them, and they had prevailed. Love had conquered all, just as it always should, and they lived, truly lived, happily ever after.